Good evening, everybody. I'm Mike Stevens, and I'm the president of the Ballaarat Mechanics Institute. Welcome to this, the first Twilight Talk via Zoom and live stream. We hope that we're not in lockdown forever and that we are able to meet again fairly soon. But in the meantime, we thought it was a good idea if we could join together on a Friday night for this Twilight Talk. And so in a moment, I'll welcome Graeme Kent, who's tonight's speaker. After Graeme's spoken tonight, there'll be an opportunity for questions, and Phil Roberts is available to be the MC while those questions are being taken. You can use the chat function on Zoom in order to get those questions into Phil. So tonight, as I said, Graeme Kent is our speaker. Graeme will be known to many of you. One of the most rewarding and worthwhile things anybody can do in life is to equip people to have a better life. Graeme has spent his entire life as an educator, started off early working in Ballarat at the YMCA, was a teacher. Later in life became involved in the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, where those of you who know the Duke of Edinburgh Awards know what a wonderful organisation that is at identifying and rewarding excellence and encourage excellence in young people. A few years ago, nearly 10 years ago, Graeme started Aussie Action Abroad and started to do some work in Nepal. It's that work in Nepal where, through Aussie Action Abroad, Graeme is able to make life better for so many people that he's going to talk to us tonight. So please welcome Graeme, and over to you.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Mike, and the opportunity of sharing tonight. I think I'm there. Oh, no, I'm not yet. I've lost something. Am I sharing the screen? Can people see what I've got here?
Yeah, that's perfect, right?
Righto. Thank you again for the opportunity. It's now a few months since we actually said that we would be alive and doing, and you know, it's really exciting to share some of the stories. So what I'm going to do is just run through a little bit about Nepal, bit of background, and then some of our stuff about our projects, and then finish off with perhaps a little bit more personal connection and some highlights that have happened throughout our experiences in Nepal. Just so that people can see the map here is Nepal that is sandwiched between China and India. It has the high area that you might be able to see. The top end of the country is high altitude. The bottom end is very low. So down the bottom, you can see there's 64 metres. Mount Everest, which is about 180k north of the southern border, is 8850. So, you know, it rises fairly rapidly, and the majority of the population is the bottom 2/3 of the country in that strip. So, you know, we now know that there's just over 28 million people. We know that 2.5 Nepals fit into Victoria. There's a Hindu and Buddhist population, obviously, and followers, Hindu being the predominant faith. Then again, we've got some issues in terms of where people are financially. It's a country that has got some very wealthy and astute business people and done really well, and that's fine. But you've also got a high proportion of the population that is very desperate in where they are on a day-to-day basis financially. I've passed the life expectancy age, so I'm doing okay and I'm happy. But that would be about the same sort of area that would be right across the country. We have an issue with water and sanitation. We have an issue with children working, but that's very much about survival and about contributing to the household. And of course, more recently, we have the COVID situation, which is impacting 35,000 plus people today. There's a couple of new people that have contracted the disease in the last 24 hours in our area, which is middle of the country, north central. And we've had 183 deaths at this point in time. Kathmandu is in a valley, and in that valley, unfortunately, it has a very high pollution rate. It's one of the highest polluted countries in the world because the valley is surrounded by hills, and the pollution is generated by fires, by diesel engines, and all sorts of other stuff that just seems to hang in the air. The Hindu faith on cremation, so somebody has passed away and they've got 48 hours to cremate the body. This is the main area on the Ballaarat River where people would gather here and farewell their departed, and they would put them on a funeral pyre and then burn the body, and the ashes are put into the river. We can watch that as outsiders, but at the same time respectfully understanding that they're doing that to celebrate the life of somebody and also have their soul move off to afterlife. The Buddhists have a very large gompa, or a stupa that is there where they would come and do their pilgrimage or their prayers on a day-to-day basis if they're close by. But they'd certainly make that a point to go there as often as possible to do their rounds and follow the Buddhist faith, which is about, as I said, about 14% that are in that area. And we've got a few that obviously are Christian and other communities that are starting to develop in that area. Obviously, we will recall that 2015, the media spread fairly widely the fact that they had suffered an earthquake. In April, on Anzac Day, when we were standing in Stir Street, perhaps, that we had news that a major earthquake of about 7.8 on the Richter scale had impacted the lives of 8,000 plus, 21,000 injured, and it impacted on 800,000 homes across the country. This was, one of the centre points was in Gorkha, or the Gurkha area, where we traditionally have our Gurkha soldiers have come from. But the earthquake lasted about 1.5 minutes, and you can see the destruction was pretty massive in that area. There was another one in May, north of Kathmandu, and it had a similar effect. So you've got a country that is impacted by earthquakes, probably on a regular basis, but not certainly as destructive as this. The earlier ones were 1930s. Then this was in 2015, but there's been somewhere around about 450 subsequent aftershocks or earthquakes up to about 4.5 on the Richter scale. So people are still a bit worried about what might happen next. This is the time of the year when there's also, this is July, August, where there's a lot of rain, monsoon time. And it's a time when people unfortunately are taken out, or their homes are taken out, and some people are taken out, obviously, with landslides. These certainly have happened more recently. This is one of our villages that we have a close connection with and have had for 20 years. You wouldn't want to be in that house. There's a couple of other houses underneath the rubble. So we've discovered that this community lost 30 homes, or 28 homes. 450 people now have nowhere to live. So what we were able to do as an organisation was to send some money straight away. We're able to help them provide temporary shelter by buying some corrugated iron. The local youth club guys got together and started to do some construction of some temporary shelters. So we know that the school and the temporary shelters are now housing those people. But we know that this time of the year, north of Kathmandu, this area, centre west of Kathmandu, and other areas are certainly impacted by landslides that are affecting their day-to-day life. We also have a history of political unrest. You know, Kathmandu is often having a strike or a banda, what they call. A banda is just a strike where people demonstrate and here burning tyres. And that's been driven by a lot of unrest in terms of the political scene, the rebels taking over the country at a point, the king being assassinated, prices of things going up. So therefore we have a demonstration to say, listen, we can't continue to do those sort of things. But on a day-to-day basis, things are pretty okay, but they're very busy. But at the same time, every now and again, you see this sort of stuff in the streets. Us as tourists are okay. You know, I've been in situations where people have needed to go through crowds like that, and they've allowed us to go through without any worries. But you know, it's certainly a bit of a challenge when you're confronted by this sometimes when you're walking or driving down the street. Nepal, as I said, is surrounded by some pretty amazing hills. And, you know, when you look at the countryside, you look at the landscape that we are in, you know, it's pretty amazing to see the surrounds and actually take that in. You know, in lots of cases, you know, when you look at some of these mountains in the middle there, you're looking at about 8,000 metres. You know, Kosciuszko is only a couple. So therefore, you know, the little hill down the bottom is where the house is probably Kosciuszko in relation to that. When you look at hills around Pokhara, you have the major one there called the fishtail in our language. And then you've got the Annapurnas that are part of that. And that backgrounds the city of Pokhara, which is obviously on the lake. And it's an opportunity for people to enjoy the landscape. We have groups that go into that area and do a lot of projects. And it's a pretty amazing sort of setting to wake up to and to work in. The locals probably see it as just a bit of a ho-ho, you know, like us with Lake Wendouree. We know that we've got Lake Wendouree, but it's only every now and again that we actually value that and really highlight that. One of the things that really is exciting, I guess, is the fact that we've got some pretty amazing people that we meet. This lady was in a village in Gorka. She was there when we took teams in there to do some repair work after the earthquake in 2000, and we were in 2016. And she was, you know, very vocal, but at the same time incredibly welcoming of our group and our people in her community. She's still living in a temporary shelter. She still has the basics. Her house is gone. She doesn't have the resources to rebuild her house. So she lives in a bamboo, plastic, tin shelter. Of course, you know, the colours and the characters that you meet are pretty amazing. There are some holy men that hang around the temples. They charge you $1 to take their photo, but at the same time, they survive on tourists supporting them in that way. But they also have a very strong belief in their faith, and they have a real sense of interest in being involved in the day-to-day proceedings at the temples and the areas which way they celebrate with their festivals. It's really hard not to get connected with kids. You know, there are a large number of young people in our communities that we meet that may be or maybe not at school. At the moment, the schools are shut down because of the COVID situation, but you know, we are able to go into communities, connect with kids, and there's certainly many cases where people have suggested, not that they would, but suggested of putting a couple of kids in their suitcases and taken home because they are just delightful to play with, to work with, to share, and to watch them play with some pretty basic stuff. In lots of cases, they have no toys, but they'll make up and share whatever they have to enjoy each other's company. Aussie Action Abroad is an organisation that I was lucky enough to be able to to help found, but it's based on the Duke of Edinburgh's award. When we started, we had a program called AusQuest, and AusQuest was focused on, again, taking young people to Nepal and other countries. But in 2011, we created a charity called Aussie Action Abroad. It's a totally voluntary organisation. We have a board of 5 people. We have had an opportunity of contributing to over 2,500 participants that have come with us since we started. We've been involved in over 70 partners in our projects. So we're very much about developing projects in partnership with communities. It's not about us creating an activity or a project because we think it's a good idea, but we very much believe in the community development model. It gives us the opportunity of employing people, but at the same time developing projects that enable the communities to actually realise their goal that they've created. In lots of cases, some of those projects might take some time to develop, a couple of years, but during that time, lots of conversations that I would have with those communities to ensure that they drive it, they manage it, and they direct the traffic, and all we're doing is helping them to do that. We can't do that unless we have some on-ground support. These guys, it's not about me in the middle. I'm saying goodbye and they give me a scarf to say goodbye. But these guys are with our trekking company. They have been partners with us for the last 20 years. The guy in the middle here is Shambu Tamang. Shambu is a guy that has summited Everest twice. He's the director of the company. The other guys are either cooks or guides that we have had for many trips. And one of the guys that I really value and appreciate is young Ballaarat here in the middle, because he's been my main man for 20 years now as a cook's assistant through to a guide, through to what we now call as a sirdar. A sirdar is a guy that looks after the rest of the Nepali staff. But again, we only do what we do because we have the support of these guys on the ground to enable us to get their logistical support underway and doing. So the logistical support that we need is really about managing all the bits and pieces that are associated to having construction teams, health education teams, teacher education or school education. Of course, we do some trekking. We have in the middle of the year, probably more than any other time, community action. It was really about following the earthquakes where people were wanting to help us in some way or another. So they came with us mid-year. And it's really about doing some internal work in some schools or some painting and decorating, doing some work on the ground. And our couple of projects that we have a bit of a focus on at the moment is that the Eltham Rotary Club and other Rotary clubs are supporting us to build a teacher training centre in Kathmandu. And then we've also been having conversations with Landcare Australia to look at how we can introduce Landcare projects into Nepal in the future. There are projects like this particular building that is built by a team over a period of 21 days. The Mothers Group came to me and invited me to a building that just had the roof and 6 poles holding up the roof. So we spoke to them over a period of time. We then put a team in a couple of years ago. And then, as I said, over the period of 21 days, they were able to totally build this facility, have it lock up, as it were. And then now that facility, like many others, is now being used for health education, for meetings, for fundraising activities, for activities whereby the Mothers Group are driving their own self-education programs. So it's pretty exciting to see. Our construction people get very much involved in their hands dirty and supporting the local communities, but at the same time learning from the local people. Our teams are very much driven by working along the side of tradesmen and learning their craft, and some of the craft that they might learn would be, some stone laying or some building of facilities like this. This was a school that had this end wall taken out during the earthquake time. So we were able then to have this team of young architects and architect students go and spend their time there. Teams are in there for maybe a month, some teams 2 weeks. And they're able then to just rebuild this facility so that could be utilised by the school. I mentioned before that the lady who was living in a temporary shelter, this is her house. I probably should have had that slide alongside her, but the reality is that, the earthquake was 5 years ago and people are still living in these sort of conditions. It's pretty tough when they don't have the resources or the support to make that happen. There was some government grants, but the reality is that, they've got to be able to match that and be able to have the manpower to construct the facility. And unfortunately, these people are taking a long time to actually have that resource available to them. We have on numerous occasions had health teams, and this young lady in the middle is a nurse that, a midwife that was with us a number of years ago. There are a number of groups throughout Australia that help us in many ways in knitting caps and hats and tops and all sorts of goodies for the community. So what we do is take that in, give that to a mothers group, and then they have the responsibility of passing that over to their community members that are in need. So this is a mothers group that, when I saw a photo the other day, the monsoon rains are looking like taking out this building. So I'm hoping still that this is still standing, so that when we're able to go back, we'll be able to do some more work with this mothers group. If they don't have a building, we'll do some education outside. So we've got some nurses from up Nil Way, some doctors that are in this group that were there after the earthquake. This is in Gorka, where the ladies were talking about women's health and spending an opportunity to understand a bit more about who they are and what they're doing. I wasn't allowed to be involved because I'm a bloke. But they had some pretty interesting discussion about their bodies that perhaps in many cases they don't quite understand what happens throughout their life. It's a bit like time when girls happen to have their period. We have a situation that now is legally inappropriate to lock away girls during that time. However, we still have communities that lock their girls away in huts like this until they're finished. So once each month they get isolated, they get locked away, and they are in a situation that is really unbelievably badly treated because their non-inclusion and their involvement in the community just does not exist. However, along the way, we've got some amazing women here in Ballarat and beyond, Geelong, Melbourne, and other areas that have been making hygiene packs for girls. They sew them up, they pack them up with some pads and some knickers, maybe a toothbrush, a comb, so that the girls then are given those through a workshop. And then at that stage, we know that their lives are changed because they're able to undertake the day-to-day work or school or whatever their activities are without being segregated from their community. So our nurses and our health team people would take those in, explain the situation, and then they go away happy because they're able to have a normal life. During the earthquake time, we had the opportunity of constructing facilities like this as a temporary school because the school got bowled over. So we were able to contribute by helping to fund some of these facilities. The Sing Australia Choir here in Ballarat did a fundraiser with others at the Mechanics Institute. So thank you for the hall. And that was able to raise some money so that we can actually send that money over and utilise that. So we would certainly guarantee that of any donation that we get, 100% of that money is taken over and used within the communities. Last year, we had a school that required a bit of work. This is a school that is in a low-caste community, very poorly equipped, and in a situation where they just need a bit of brightening up and decorating. So the two ladies that were involved were interior decorators from New South Wales. One of our Nepali guys was doing a bit of painting, and it was an opportunity for me to take my oldest daughter and my eldest granddaughter, and here they are teaching a group of young people in Kathmandu Zumba, or some exercise, dance exercise programs. These young ladies learnt over a period of 3 days, where they then were able to take those programs into schools. I did hear there are about 700 young people that are now undertaking those activities based on this introduction over a period of 3 days, which was really exciting. We should be in Nepal nearly at the moment, because these guys are from Eltham Rotary Club. They were there last year. They were going to be there this year again to start building a facility for us as an education training centre. The intent is that this building will be a training centre for teachers across the country, because we'll start to do some online training based out of this. But because of the earthquake, you can see that there's a fair bit of metalwork that's got to go in the ground before they actually start to pour concrete and build on top of that. So most of the money that was raised at that point was underground, and unfortunately you're not going to see too much of that until we start to go up from here. And at the moment we're looking at the ground floor being completed in the next few months, all being well, and hopefully if we can raise some funds, we'll then have that fitted out with equipment so that the teachers can be delivered some programs through the electronic means and have online training. This facility was built last 2 years. It was a building that was damaged by the earthquake beforehand. We demolished the building with the local community, and two visits has enabled our teams to go in there and construct this facility for the mothers group and the community. And again, you know, it's about connecting with people and communities. And when they started to lay the foundation, probably every person in the village was there to assist in some way or another. So, you know, it's not about us going in there and just whacking it up and doing it in isolation, but rather doing it in partnership with everyone. The woman in the middle with the glasses on her head was a photographer with us in 2000. She decided last year to come back with her daughter, which is on the, she's on the end here with the green top. So as a mother-daughter for two young ladies that came back as a bit of a reunion, and it was an opportunity for them to be able to use their creativity to paint, not those paintings on the outside, but they actually were able to do some paintings on the inside of the classroom so that the students had some more decorative educational resources available to them. These resources were gathered by staff at PINAC. The two in the top are PINAC staff here in Ballarat, and they were able to gather materials for Samjana on the right-hand side. Samjana has created an organisation in Pokhara for children with autism. She's the only one that has led that charge. She's now got a team of people around her and lacked resources, so these guys were able to gather those materials and take them over, and that was really exciting that, you know, they're able to share that. Similarly, you know, these guys run an organisation called Independent Living Centre, and Jana, the woman in the middle wheelchair, has a disability that means that she hasn't grown very much. Her bones are brittle and all of those issues, but she's led the charge with this organisation to create support for people in Pokhara that are wheelchair bound. We were able to take those wheelchairs in through some donations through Ballaarat Health Services through SWEP, the equipment program that they have here, and they're able to share those with that community. And now they've got people that are mobile rather than sedentary. It's a bit hard to go to Nepal without going for a walk. These guys are up near the Everest region. They're on the side of a mount or a hill called Kalapatar, Black Mountain. It's the one area that when you go up to Everest Base Camp, you can't see Mount Everest. So you go up to Kalapatar so that you can see Everest and all its glory. But as you can see, it's pretty barren, it's pretty cold, and it's pretty high. So these guys were a trekking team that we had a couple of years ago. They're on the last charge before they get to about 5,500 metres. And it's certainly a challenge at that point physically to gulp the air and to survive for too long in the cold. I just want to talk very quickly about three pretty amazing situations that you get presented with. January this year, I was a couple of days from leaving our little village and going back into Kathmandu, and sitting at this table, I was presented to this little boy. Some of you people have seen the photo before and you know his age, but for those of you that have not seen the photo, I want you to just have a guess as to what age he is. Because the reality is that is not what you think he is. He is 5 years old. He was brought to me one morning by Grandma and a couple of ladies with an introduction that said, "We need you to help save this boy's life." There was the situation that you get presented with and you're really not quite sure what to do. His movement from head down is non-existent. His eye contact and his head movement is not too bad. But the reality was that his mum gave birth, and just after doing that, she threw him outside. Her grandmother and girlfriends collected him and looked after him, and he's now in their care. Mum's not around, Dad's not around. So what we've been able to do is connect him with an organisation, so he's had some assessment and some treatment. We've also had some amazing people here in Ballarat that have raised some money so that we can cover the costs of his treatment. We're just waiting for the COVID situation to go back down so that we can actually continue to have people go and visit and do some rehab work with him and give him some ongoing treatment. But you get put into a situation like that where, he doesn't deserve to be in that situation. He ends up that because of circumstances, but there's a community that is around that is helping him and supporting him, and we can help in some little way. Serby was, or is, a guy that lives in a disability centre in Kathmandu. And as you can see, his hands and his feet are fairly scuffed. He actually has no movement other than scuffing around on the floor. I want to tell you the story about this guy because when I went there for a meeting one day, I was there a bit earlier, and I asked for a key to the office. He rummaged into his pocket, and the blue container that he's got in his hand held the key to the office. He's the key keeper man, and he's a guy that sits around, scuffles around, he checks people as they come into the building, but he's the key keeper because he has a responsibility, has a role to play. He has a disability, but so what? He has an amazing smile, and we get on incredibly well. We don't understand what we're saying to each other, but we get on really well every time we see him, and he just beams from ear to ear. So we continue to work with them, and that's an organisation that has been working with disability people for some time now. We discovered along the way that the Ryder Cheshire Foundation people had a connection with them, so the group here in Ballarat are now reconnecting with them, and I've been able to facilitate some of that discussion so that, hopefully sometime in the future we'll have a little bit more involvement with them to support them. But one little story with this young lady, then I'm just about wrapped up. Naran is a young lady that came to us in 2000. We were doing an information session in the Royal Society building in Spring Street in Melbourne. My office was in Victoria Parade, probably about a 10-minute walk down the road. And she was there filling out application form in tears on the phone, trying to gather some information so that she could complete the application form so she could go to Nepal. She thrust the application form into my hand and $500 because we required that as a deposit. And she said, I have to go to Nepal. And I went, yeah, okay, that's fine. But we were actually full at that stage. We had a full complement of people that we could take. But as I walked down the street, I read her application and decided very quickly that she had to be part of the team. She was a young lady at that stage that was unemployed. She was living on the street. She was involved in the drug scene. She was a single mum, and she was really struggling to get her act together. We took her to Nepal, and during that time, she was involved with a team. We were there for just on 2 months or thereabouts. And in that time, she was very actively involved. She came back to Australia and lived in a tent in Grandma's backyard. She re-established her life, went back to uni, and then now, over the last number of years, has been involved with Red Cross International and leading programs for them in women's health and for the Red Cross in Afghanistan and all sorts of other places. So she has been able to rebuild an incredible life because she was part of our program. And it's really exciting to see that. And fortunately, I had the opportunity of having a chat with her yesterday, and she's reconnecting with us so that we'll do a bit of work in the future. Here's a couple of photos that it's just amazing. I want some firewood. I noticed down the street the other day that there was a little pile of kindling that somebody had. So if you want some kindling, see this lady. Or if you want bricks carted, oh, hang on, I've got a baby. By the way, I didn't see any bricks fall, so I think the baby was safe. But, you know, the situation that we find ourselves in where women are forced to work in that sort of situation, but at the same time look after their bub, amazing stuff. It's a bit hard not to go past the market stalls where the pasta, the rice bubbles, the beans and lentils, the pulse is all there in full display, ready for you to take a dip and take home and cook up. Everything is I know it's organic, it's straight from the garden, it's you know, available to you, and away you go. So you go and do that and you're all happy. Need your washing done? Just leave it out to these guys to do and they'll hang it up in the street. Or if I want to go to the butcher's, oh, hang on, I got a butcher's that actually sits on the side of the road or has his meat delivered. There's a main road on our right-hand side that, by the way, we just unload there as we go, and there's no real drama about that. So if you're a meat lover, hello. I need my wire fixed. The black one there is one of mine, or no, maybe it's the white one. So I certainly see that on numerous occasions, although they're now starting to take a lot of those down and having a bit more streamlined with that, but that still exists in many cases. We're going to build a road, let's just do it around the mountain. And it's pretty amazing, isn't it? I find, you know, that the cultures of Nepal are pretty amazing. You know, we have 126 ethnic groups or thereabouts. 120 of those would have their own language. These are Sherpa ladies. The necklace that they have around is incredibly expensive, and it's something that they really value and bring out on special occasions. Angdali is the lady second from the left without the hat on. She's an old friend that we've had for a long time, and it's really just an amazing culture to share when you actually get the opportunity to go to Nepal and be part of these cultures. Part of their whole lifestyle is better than good. And I finish with this guy that just says, Namaste. We have a situation right across the country where people would welcome you and greet you with your hands folded in this position and saying Namaste. And it's really honouring the God that's within you. It's about recognising and valuing who you are. And everyone is brought up with that as being part of their day-to-day operation. Namaskar is actually a little bit more formal address that you would have to someone that's an important person. But generally, day-to-day, we would be greeted with and farewell with a namaste. So thank you for the opportunity of sharing for the last little while about our Nepal. And we look forward to being able to share some more stories in the future. So thank you for that. And I again thank the BMI and those that are online for taking time tonight in this nice, well, it's been a beautiful day here in Ballarat, but you know, hopefully all things are good for the next few days. Thanks, guys.
Should we clap?
Thank you very much, Graeme. We have some questions. Fascinating talk that you've given. Prue was wanting to know a little bit more about how the virus has affected Nepal, and whether if you're going to go back, have you got any plans or it's still on hold, I guess?
Yeah, I said to my wife today that I want to go back, and you know, the reality is that there's no no flights. There's no travel insurance. There's no escape from quarantine when I get there, and there's no escape from quarantine when I came home. So, you know, as much as I want to be there, I can't do that. We want to be able to send some guys up the country to do some work, but they can't leave because Kathmandu is in lockdown. The lockdown has been extended for another week and a half, I think. So there is 35,000 cases across the country. There are two of the 79 districts. There are 2 districts that do not have the virus. So it's impacting across the board. The problem will continue to be where the Indian border, particularly when that is open, they'll just let a whole lot of people across the border without any tests, probably. And if they do have any tests and they have any cases, well, then the hospitals are stretched to the limit as to how they can manage that. So it's a worry. The tourism industry has just been decimated. So you've got 3,000 plus trekking companies that don't have any work, and then all those that are associated to them in tea houses, in food, in gear, just don't have any income. So, you know, it is going to be a long-term effect for a country that doesn't have any JobKeeper or job seeker funding. They don't have any insurance in that respect, and they don't have any capacity to have anything to support. So it's going to be a really challenging period of time for people over the next 12 months. But the virus is there, it's growing, and it's going to be have increasing devastating effects. There's only, when you're looking at 28 million people, there's 183 deaths, but still I suspect there's more to come.
Is there more contact with India than China, or is there a tension between the countries?
Yeah, there is, and the reality is that China are doing a lot of infrastructure stuff. So my understanding is that they're building or built 15 hydro stations across the country. They're investing money into those, but the reality is that in the future they'll pull out of that and not have any maintenance of those facilities, and Nepal's going to end up with hydro systems that are going to be in dire straits because of lack of maintenance. India is trying to take over some land, and more recently we saw a slither of land on the top left-hand corner of the country. There was a dispute on the ground. There were soldiers that were placed into that area from both India and Nepal. I think the situation has been resolved now with the Nepali government issuing a new map with that piece of land, but India is still trying to encroach on some of the land that is there. And every now and again you see signs around Nepal saying back off India. So, you know, you've got those two countries that are taking what they can from Nepal without delivering too much in return for our Nepalese people.
Graeme, we had a communication from Babu, B-A-B-U,
Yeah.
who said that they were highly appreciative of your work and the work of the Aussie Action abroad, and wanted to thank you very much. And I'm sure everyone else watching would feel the same. So it's wonderful work that you're doing.
Thanks very much. Babu Kaji Shrestha is an old mate of mine, and he said that he'd try and hook in, so it's great. But he and I have been mates now for about 18 years, and he conducts an education organisation called Global Action Nepal, and you know, we've not only got a professional relationship, but we've got a mateship that is really strong. So, you know, the relationship we have with people like BK is family rather than a professional one. So it goes beyond that.
Now, there's a question here from Daniel. Building in these earthquake-prone conditions, do you find yourself moving away from unreinforced masonry construction and building with more localised materials?
The Reconstruction Authority has issued very strict guidelines as to what you can do in terms of rebuilding, so that traditional materials have been stone, or in some areas brick or concrete block. But the reality now is that when we would have put up three lengths of steel iron in a pillar, there's now required to be 7. There's now required to be other pieces of material in there to strengthen that. Every 7th layer of brick or stone is actually got to have a band of concrete and an iron rod to tie it all together. So you've actually got some fairly strict guidelines that have increased the price of the production of a building or a house, and therefore, you know, that impacts on the budget that people have available to them. But you know, they are really conscious of the fact that if they're going to rebuild, it's got to be stronger, it's got to be better, and it's got to be bolder. But at the same time, you know, there are people that just can't afford to do that.
Okay, there's another question from Daniel. Any insight as to when the mid-year construction team in Lamjung will kick off again?
Oh, next year, I hope. We would hope that this time next year that we might be on the ground. We would aim to be looking at June, July for a team to go in. But, you know, again, we'll only go when my board says that it's okay to go. And we know that travel is safe and okay. We know that travel insurance is there and in place. And we know that we have the ability to travel around, because at the moment you can't do that in Nepal.
Well, on behalf of everyone, I'd like to wish you all the best, Graeme. It's been a fantastic talk and I think it's worked very well. I'm not sure if people can actually clap, but I'm sure they would want to.
Thanks.
It's been very informative. And it's wonderful the work you're doing, and we wish you all the best with it. And I hope you're able to raise more funds, because obviously you're putting them to very good use. So we want to thank you very, very much for that.
Pleasure.
The last thing I want to say, which is sort of after your talk, Graeme, but just to say to everybody, we're wanting to do another talk in a fortnight, and we're very conscious that the City Council elections are coming up, and we're planning to get together a panel of people to talk about the elections, what's involved. The title might be Everything You Wanted to Know About Standing for Council, but were too afraid to ask. So that's on the 11th September. So if people in a fortnight, so people can keep posted on Facebook or however they found out about this talk, and we'll have something similar. So thanks very much, Graeme, for what you've done and starting us off. It's been very informative, very interesting, wonderful photographs, and we
Thanks.
couldn't have had a better start. So thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you. Thanks, Geraldine. Thank you, everyone, for listening in.
It's our pleasure.
Right.
Mm.
Bye all.
Bye.
Good night.
Thanks.
Okay, just hang on a second. I just have to stop the stream.
Done.